Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Office Hours. I'm Jeff Blankenberg, and with me today, as is usual lately, Andy Haldeman. Welcome, Andy.
Thanks, Jeff.
We are here to answer all of your questions about Alexa and development and devices and voice interfaces and all that kind of stuff. So if you have questions for us, please reach out and let us know in the chat. We are broadcasting on Twitch and Twitter and YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook. So I'm assuming if you're watching us, you're finding us on one of those places. But if you have a place you like better, maybe you found us on LinkedIn, but you'd rather be on Twitch, we're on all the things. So come find us where you want to be. Andy, we're in one of those weird times right now where my office is freezing today. And the reason that it's freezing is because Ohio is currently in that state where it's either 75 and sunny or 45 and raining. And today is one of those 45 days. My furnace doesn't even know what to do.
Well, I'm supposed to be the warmest day of the year in Seattle today with so far 62 degrees, but it's raining and gray skies. So I don't know what to make of that either.
Yeah, that doesn't sound super good. And I'm coming to Seattle a couple of times next month, so I'm looking forward to seeing you and some of the rest of the team. It should be good. I wanted to give one quick update also. For those of you that recall, we've had a guest, someone asking a question about some issues they were having with the Arabic language, even though they live in Israel. And that they have their stuff set to English and it's just all still showing in Arabic. I want to let you know we haven't actually solved the problem yet, but they've identified the problem and they're currently working on the bug. So I like to bring updates and let you guys know that like the things you talk to us about here do actually happen. We try to take action on as many of them as we can. And so I wanted to let you all know that at least that one specifically, it looks like in the next week or so, we might have a fix for that. So I'm looking forward to being able to announce that thing has been solved. And it's a result of all of the awesome things you guys bring to us here is trying to get these things fixed. I'm going to be better about bringing you updates as I have them. Okay, so Habuma and Don and Awitters are all here. Good to see you guys. Brian Tarbox has a question that I haven't read yet, so I'm just going to read it out loud. I'm creating a kiosk mode slideshow. It uses AutoPage to cycle through various pages I've created using QuickChart.io. I set the background image of the page to the created URL. I'd like to include a page I created with APL. Is there any way to do that? I'd ideally like to generate a URL for the rendered APL doc, but open to other ideas. This is an interesting question. So as I think about APL, you were talking about you're using AutoPage to cycle through various pages that you've created in QuickChart, but you're talking about an APL page that just has a background image. I think, Brian, that's what I'm reading here. And you'd like to create another page in that sequence that you created with APL. Is there any way to do that? I'd ideally like to generate a URL for the rendered APL doc, but I'm open to other ideas. So I think at its core, what you are asking is, can I have a random APL file living somewhere on the internet, and could I use that as the source of what I am rendering in APL? And my answer to that should be yes. It is yes. Yes, you should be able to do that. I don't see any difference to me between using an APL file that you have stored locally in your source code that everything else runs from, and having an APL file that lives on a server somewhere else. As long as you have a resolvable URL using HTTPS that can be accessed by the public internet, I would expect that you should be able to do that without any issue. I don't know what the render speed will be because you have to go fetch that thing rather than it already being there and be able to deliver it locally. But I wouldn't expect it to be dramatically different because it's not as if what Alexa is showing on the screen is happening locally on the device. It's still coming from the internet regardless. So my opinion here is that yes, you should be able to reference an APL document that is on the public secure internet and pull that in. Now, the concern I have with this question is that the fact that you're asking it suggests you've already tried it and you didn't have any success. Can you create a URL from a rendered API? Oh, I see. You want to go the other way. you want to render an APL document and then use it in something else, like as an image. Okay, you want to go the other direction. I don't believe that is, it's possible, but I don't believe that natively you're just going to find a magic solution to that. Because what you need is a renderer. You need to be able to render an APL document so that it visually appears. It's not just the JSON, right? We can actually see what the APL looks like. And then what you're asking is, can I get basically a screen capture, an image of what that rendered to, and use that in something else? I think, Brian, that's what you're asking me. And so, no, I'm not aware of a way that you could do that, not with existing tools or processes or anything like that. So that being said, you could try to, there's a number of ways that you could try to do this. The first one would be to pre-process this stuff, which isn't always predictable, especially if you have something that's like customized for a specific user and you don't know what the APL is going to look like. But if you could pre-render it, pre-process this stuff, that would be easier. Then you could potentially, like in a really manual sense, you could go grab a screenshot from the simulator, or you could, that's probably where I'd start. You could also go to APL Ninja, who has a renderer there. I would imagine he's using something very similar to ours. So if I go there and I look at this, and then I see device, I'm just using the APL Ninja editor right now. I'd have to look at his source. I haven't looked at what his rendering engine is, nor do I know that I'm going to be able to figure that out just by looking at it here on. No, I'd have to dig through a bunch of CSS and stuff to figure out what he's really trying to do there. But somewhere in there is the rendering tool that he's using, which I'm not familiar with. I doubt he built it himself. That seems like that would be a significant amount of work. But it could be embedding the same rendering engine that we use in the simulator. That's something I should probably know. I wonder how he's actually doing that. But to answer your biggest question, no, there is not a automated or free or available rendering engine that will allow you to take APL, turn it into an image, and use that image someplace. But I think between the APL Ninja website and the simulator, APL Ninja might be easier just because it doesn't require a login. You could build a screen scraping engine of sort. You'd have to build this yourself, but you could potentially load up an APL Ninja page, feed it the APL that you want, get it to render that thing in a browser, and automate an entire process that takes a screenshot of a very specific area of the screen. I've gone deep in the screen scraping world, so I know all of that is possible, but I don't know. You definitely are going to have some work ahead of you to do it, but I don't think it's impossible. I just think it's going to be hard. Andy, in your technical early days, did you ever have to do any kind of screen scraping stuff?
No, I was more in the kind of back end.
I can't tell you the number of things that I did early on. We're talking like late 90s, early 2000s, where we needed some data and we just didn't have a good way to get it. I'll give you a quick example. The domain name, I don't even know who uses it anymore, but for about 8 years, I owned cutdownthenets.com. which for those of you that are paying attention to the NCAA basketball tournament right now, it was a bracket system. This was way before like ESPN and Yahoo and everybody else had their own bracket that you could just fill out. I built one for my team at my office, and I thought it was super cool. And the first version of it, I had to go through and like mark the winners of each game, and then it would, it would go through and run all the brackets against that and figure out what everybody's score was and everything. It was cool. And in my office, I probably had like 40 people participating. And then the second year, they started asking me like, hey, could I get my dad into this? Could I get my friends? And I was like, yeah, whatever, it's fine. And so by year 3, I had 1,500 entries in this little March Madness tournament thing and that was a lot for me to like worry about scoring and doing all the other stuff. So I built a lot of screen scraping tools to be able to go out to ESPN and scrape all of the outcomes of the games so
Yeah.
that like the moment a game ended, it was updated and it just took care of all of that stuff for me.
Nice.
So I got pretty good at like mapping HTML and figuring out where pieces fit and how that stuff all works. So I did a lot of that stuff in the early days.
Just never with APL.
Never with APL. And as TradeLast mentions, pinging Alexander Martin over at APL Ninja, that might be a feature request he'd be open to, right? You feed it an APL document, it returns to you an image. That would be amazing. I'm also going to pop that on my list of features that I wish our team would create. Again, not with any promises in mind, but I'm going to see what I can do to get that on their radar as well. So let me add this as a item I want to follow up on. Perfect. Okay. SmartNet TV on YouTube says, hello, everyone. I have 2 questions today. Are there any restrictions to use Alexa as a tool, source to ask questions or fax data during a TV show or national level broadcasting? I'm not aware of one, but I know that there's always a lot of weird things about like product placement and stuff like that, but it's usually the other way. Usually it's like, hey, we want to use Alexa. Will you pay us $50,000 to be in our movie or whatever? And then they'll find a way around it if we're not willing to pay for them. But I don't know about the other way where you just want to use it. I mean, the one piece of information I will share with you that I am confidently aware of is that you can't use Alexa's voice in your advertising. So if you guys have ever listened to the radio, you'll hear DJs say like, hey, yeah, and you can listen to our station on Alexa. You just have to say this. You'll never hear that done in Alexa's voice, or at least you shouldn't hear it done in Alexa's voice. Obviously, it would be very easy to make a recording of Alexa saying anything you want. With our tools, you can do that pretty easily. But my understanding is that you can't use her voice as part of a promotion or advertisement for your own stuff. That's the only really big piece that I'm aware of. Outside of that, I think if you just wanted to use Alexa on your TV show or broadcast, I can connect you with the right person, SmartNet TV. We have a person that deals with a lot of those kinds of things. They work with the NBC, Universals, and the companies of that scale in that market that might be worthwhile to just connect you with and see if there are any things that I'm not aware of. Andy and I are here primarily because we're technical people. And so when you start getting into things that involve lawyers and contracts and all sorts of other stuff, we are not nearly as knowledgeable. I have suspicions about how it might go, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I feel unqualified to answer that question. It's a good question. I mean, I think it's definitely worth looking into, but I do feel
like for the most part, as long as you're not using it to promote your stuff, I think worst case, you might get a letter that says, please stop doing that. But I doubt it. Okay, Brian, I think we've gone deep enough on your questions. So for now, I'm going to let that go. Domenico Mono on YouTube says, hi, is it correct that if I want to repeatedly test persistent attributes, but I want them to change at each test, I need to go into DynamoDB and delete the values each time? I mean, that is one option. One of the other things that I've done when I'm testing values and options is that I just have a voice command that I build. It's temporary, right? I'm only building it for right now, and it'll be removed before I publish. But I have a voice command that just deletes those records from the database, so I don't have to actually like manually open my database. I just write a simple query, and then when I'm talking to the device and testing, I can be like, my favorite color is orange. And it goes, okay, cool, I've saved your color. And then I say, what is my favorite color? And she says orange. And then I say, okay, delete my favorite color. And then she deletes that from the database. And then I can start that whole process over again, just talking and testing and making sure that everything comes through properly without having to like stop and close the session and do all the other stuff. You might find that saves you more time than you would like.
You can also test it locally too, right? And run your own tests without having to use DynamoDB.
Yes, you could run it through like breakpoints and stuff like that, but ultimately, even when you're testing locally, it still stores to a database someplace. It's not a local Dynamo. Right. It's still pushing it into the cloud. So you'd have to find a way to delete those records. You could also take it one step further, which is to not create a voice command at all, but instead insert the thing, respond, and then as you're responding, delete the thing, right? Like generate the utterance that you want to have created to respond to the user. Be like, hey, your favorite color is orange. And then also send a delete command to the database so that the next time you ask, it's already empty again. Lots of ways around that, but no, I don't think that you have to go into Dynamo and delete values. But in the big picture of all of this, yes, those records have to be deleted. That is where the persistent attributes live. And so if you want them to go away, you have to delete them. Bondad says, could this be a piece of the puzzle? He says there's an APL core library on GitHub that we have. I didn't think that this would render graphics, but I'm going to go check this really quick. Let's see. I don't believe that there is a way using this. Maybe there is. I need to read this more. So, okay, so this APL core thing that Bondad shared, thank you, by the way. This is the APL core library is actually the rendering engine. But I don't know that this necessarily gives you a screenshot. Like you couldn't, I don't know if you could use this to output a graphic that you could use someplace else. But it could be. It could potentially, like if you modified this a bit, you could get it to generate things. But because APL has like motion and other things that can play into it, I don't think you're just going to get like a static PNG that is the output of this thing. But this is the core rendering engine. So this is probably also how APL Ninja is using this, because the source code is available. So if you guys didn't see this comment, this is on Twitch. It's github.com/alexa/apl-core-library. But that might be worthwhile for some of you to check out if you haven't already. That's pretty cool. Thank you, Bondad. The upcoming American Song Contest TV show has a contestant with the same name as our device. TradeLast hopes that doesn't trigger everybody's echoes. I agree. I'm betting it will, though, because we actually have to do some special things when we broadcast like television commercials. We put some very clear and obvious gaps throughout the word so that the speaker doesn't hear it properly. We hear it. It all blends together to us. But for the device, it does not hear it as the command, so it doesn't wake up. Well, somehow I'm at the end of the questions already. We must have answered everyone's questions, Andy. No one needs to anymore.
Cancel the series.
Yeah, let's end it. No, I mean, it's always good when we get to the end of the question list, and there will be more just by me mentioning that. Someone will be like, oh, I have a thing. Yeah. But in the meantime, you and I we haven't really talked a lot recently. I'd love to know, are you working on anything interesting these days?
Yeah, last week we talked about, I threw out there that I was going to go through the different smart home APIs and start, building sample skills with them just to see, what it's like. So last week I did the scene controller, which was pretty quick. And then I spent some time on the mode controller. And as I go, I find bugs. Maybe it's in the documentation, maybe it's in our code, and some pretty interesting ones. One of the ones I found was that if you include these little, greater than, less than symbols inside the endpoint ID. A lot of times in our documentation might say, you put brackets around it to indicate that you need to put your own endpoint ID into the field. And it created some strange behavior where I successfully linked my skill, but it did not show up in my smart home area of the Alexa app.
Oh. And
so it just silently kind of accepted it and failed. And it took some digging to figure that out, but I finally figured out that, yeah, those characters are not allowed in the endpoint ID field, which is listed in our documentation. But because I was using the sample code, it was something that had, inadvertently made its way in there. So yeah, we're fixing that so that so that that doesn't happen to somebody else. But just little things like that you stumble across that can be pretty challenging for someone to figure out,
Right.
because you don't get a response back that says anything like why it's failing. So
Yeah.
um,
It's
yeah,
funny you mention that, because I had a very similar experience this morning. I had every intention of sitting down this morning and buckling in for like 2 hours solid of like writing this slot machine code. And so I loaded up my skill. Mind you, I haven't changed anything in a few days. And
yeah,
the last time that I ran it, everything worked perfectly. I have I'm working on the actual slot machine sounds. So I have like the churning of the reels going. It's like a nice like digital kind of sound. And then I have these I call them chunks, but like the three reels stopping, and I have sound effects for that. And the
yeah.
last time that I was working on this, which was probably Thursday, um, everything worked great. All the sound effects played. They didn't work in exactly the order I wanted, and that was what I was going to go work on, but all the sounds played and whatever. And so I got in this morning and I fired it up, and I got no sounds, nothing. But I also got no errors. And I was like, did I break something? Did I screw something up? And so, I took it over to there's the audio. Actually, I can, maybe I'll show this just so we can show some screens and show people things.
Oh, nice.
Let's do this, and then we'll go developer.amazon. So I'm going to the dev console. I'm coming into casino slots, which is the skill that I'm working on right now. And in here, multimodal responses, I have this slot machine spin. I brought this in here this morning to work on stuff. And so you can see that I chopped it all the way down to just like one audio file. This is a much larger thing, but I had chopped it down to just one audio file, and it still didn't work. Now, if I do preview now, you can hear that background sound. It sounds like this. Right? It sounds like a slot machine. But this wasn't playing. And as a result, nothing else was playing either. And what I eventually figured out was that, and I don't even know how this happened. I have this file, as you can see, it's sitting in an S3 bucket.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, this file, not the rest of them, but this file was no longer public in the S3 bucket. It existed. And you would get, you get the standard like XML response from S3 that like, hey, you don't have access to this file. But it did not actually give me the file. And so as a result of that, this didn't make any noise. This like sound rendering, you can see down here at the bottom, none of this showed up. It was just silence, and there was no rendering, but no error. This sounds like what you're describing too, right? Like it's a clean error. I'm not hearing anything. I'm not seeing anything, but it's definitely not working.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I thought, well, let me go check my permissions. Maybe it can't get access to a file or whatever. And in fact, this file was no longer public. I don't know how that happens. I didn't think that I could set public access temporarily, but apparently I did. So now it works. And now I've got to go back and like add in all my files again and move stuff around. But yeah, that was incredibly frustrating.
How did you figure that out? I mean, did you look? I'm just trying to think through. Is that an error that you would see in CloudWatch, or no? Probably not, right? Because Alexa's calling that.
There was no errors at all. And in fact, when I'm running this thing, this doesn't even have CloudWatch or logging or anything behind it at all.
Right.
This is just like an audio design tool. So if you don't see the error on the screen, there isn't anything being dumped anywhere else. Very odd.
Yeah, it is a challenge. I know that I've had to, it's not the first time I've had to dig into why my code wasn't working. You can send clean JSON back to Alexa, and sometimes if there's an error with it, it will just kind of fail silently and you won't get any feedback.
Right.
And so you kind of have to spend your time fiddling with the JSON or doing what you're doing, trying to figure out like what could be wrong. I've had times where I've realized I had the timestamp in the wrong format. That's caused challenges for me before. Sometimes it's the version that I'm including for a controller can cause errors, and you just get random Alexa errors where sometimes we'll say something like, device is not responding, or device does not support that, or odd things like that, or just fail silently. And so you know, it takes some extra special attention to your code and get really close and personal with it to figure out, okay, what could possibly be the problem. So
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because in these clean fails, like you don't get any feedback, and so you're completely relying on like your problem solving skills to be like, well, what could be wrong? Because the error, I'm not getting any errors, but like if an audio file isn't being returned, it seems like that's an error that should be shown somewhere, because that's clearly, you know, I don't know. I feel like those are the kinds of things that we need to dig a little deeper on, because it's just, that just leads to frustration. You know, I went through it, but I'm sure dozens, hundreds of other developers have had the same problem.
No, for sure. It can take hours, you know, or even days, depending on
Yeah,
you know,
it ate
how
my
complicated the problem is.
I ended up making no progress.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to move on. We've got a nice amount of chat now. That's good.
Oh, good.
Harry Hart on YouTube said he's got an Alexa for Business question, and I would love to know the scenario in which what he's describing here is useful, necessary, what its purpose is. He plays a 3-second MP3 announcement using the AWS CLI every 20 seconds to what he describes as scores of Echo 4th generation devices. After a couple of hours, one or more of the devices will no longer play the message. He sees the blue light illuminate, but he doesn't actually get to see hear the sound. And if he reboots the device, the announcements play again. This does not happen on the original Echo device and can run for months without failing. I would love to know why every 20 seconds you are playing something out of the device. I mean, I'm sure there's a reasonable purpose for that, but that sounds like a frequent update, frequent notification. I don't have the foggiest idea why something that you're trying to run like this, where you're sending announcements every 20 seconds to a whole pile of devices, why certain ones would stop working. This does feel like you are testing some limits on the device, how long it can pay attention, how frequently, like we're getting into some of the nuts and bolts of devices. How frequently are they actually connected to Wi-Fi? Like is it holding an all the time connection, or is it just checking occasionally to see what's going on? These are questions I don't have the answers to, but it's possible that once something gets out of the loop, as you're describing here, then it stops working forever. But I don't have the answer for you on this one. This is an interesting question. What I can do, Harry, is I will forward this question over to our Alexa for Business team and see if they have any thoughts. But what's likely to happen next is that they're going to say, hey, can we talk with this person to understand their problem or see it, or if you have videos or anything like that. So my recommendation to you, to make my life easier and to ultimately make your life easier, would be to the next time you run this and you can replicate that problem, if you can take a video of that and send that over to me, ideally on Slack. This is my commercial break, where we're going to talk about Slack for just a quick second. So if you guys aren't already on Slack, and Harry, I don't know if you're there or not, but I want to make sure everybody knows this exists. We do have a public Slack community that all of you are welcome to. We answer your questions there all week. We talk about all sorts of things. We do surveys to ask you guys about your opinions and thoughts on specific topics. A lot of those things lead directly to product features and things like that. So it's a good way to stay connected to what's going on with Alexa, talk with thousands of other people that are building stuff for Alexa, but also have an influence on what's going on with the product and things like that. So if you're not in Slack, alexa.design/Slack is the way to get there. And Harry, specifically for you, if you will reach out to me there, I would love to be able to have a conversation and get a dialogue so that we can get the answers we need to help them understand the problem that you're having. It would include things like, what is your skill ID and what is your user account and all that kind of stuff, so that they can look and see, and maybe there are logs on our side that let us know what might be going wrong. So that is Slack. Please join. Okay, so I don't have any answers for you right now, Harry, but hopefully we can dig into that for you a little bit. W. Giorgio says, no questions. He's creating his own leaderboards, and he's getting close to finishing. So these are built custom for you, W. Giorgio. You've built your own leaderboards rather than leaning on like the Game On APIs or some other third-party service. That's pretty cool. All right. So Dev Power says, I asked this on Slack, but maybe we can talk about it here as well. Are there any recommendations or best practices for using separate DynamoDB tables for different environments? Also, is there a way to get, I just saw this morning and I didn't have a chance to reply to you yet. Also, is there a way to get rid of certification test data in our table once we pass? Yes and yes. So these are all things that I've struggled with myself. There's a number of qualifying criteria that I'm going to ask you that will make some things dependent on these. But first, separate DynamoDB tables for different environments. So you're talking about, like, I want to use a dev table versus a prod table, right? So that I only have my production table when we're in production. I only have my dev table when we're in development. That's a relatively easy thing to do. You should be able to change out your connection strings and when you're talking to the APIs for Dynamo, you should be able to say, what environment am I in? And you can set some properties in your Lambda to know whether you're in production or development or whatever. And then use those environment variables to dictate how you're going to communicate with which table. I do that kind of stuff all the time. I tend to lean more into a service called Airtable, which is outside of Amazon, for a lot of my database needs these days. And I do the same thing, right? I will have different tables of data for different things, depending on whether it's production or staging or whatever. And what I will do is just save those as environment variables. And then depending on which environment I'm in, it gives me the appropriate URL so that you don't even have to worry about switching or carrying things over like that. So that's step one. But if you keep everything in one table, which is also totally okay, then what I generally recommend doing is when you're in development, when your code is still in development, I generally use environment variables in another way as well, which is that I will have a column in my database that is dev versus prod. So now I have one table, but I have different types of data. I'll just give it an extra column, dev versus prod, or whatever your environments are. And when my code is in development, I will, it uses the environment variable dev. So every time it inserts a record into the database, it uses dev as an additional field that I'm using in that database. Now, the reason that that's nice is because then I can write queries that say, go delete all of that stuff. And I can delete all of the development data pretty quickly by just running one quick query against it and saying, anything that matches this, it's gone. This allows you to get rid of all of those testing records and certification records that get generated automatically when you push your skill to certification, just testing users and all sorts of other stuff. So those are my 2 tips there. I'm sure there are some really smart people here that have a 3rd, 5th, 12th way to solve that problem, but that's how I've generally done it. The catch with Dynamo is, and this is where the conditional stuff comes in, is if you're using Alexa hosted, you're a little more challenged because Alexa hosted is talking to a Dynamo table, and that's it. That's all you get. So if you want to talk to additional tables, you need to set something up on AWS. You need to use the APIs to talk directly to Dynamo versus just using the connector that we provide automatically to talk to your one table. So there's a bit more work and a bit more, manipulation as you go from talking to the one built-in Dynamo table you have for Alexa hosted to any Dynamo table anywhere on AWS. But it's not hard, and there's lots of samples and examples out there for you. But that's hopefully that helps. But environment variables have been a safeguard for me for quite a while. All right. Lovis Weiland on LinkedIn says, good evening, good morning. I'm currently writing my master thesis about the integration of Alexa into a merchandise management system at the University of Trier in Germany. Is there any possibility to maybe cooperate on that topic? Greetings from sunny Germany. Well, I'm thankful for you that you at least have some nice weather. Andy and I are stuck in the rain.
Yeah.
A merchandise management system. This is kind of cool. I like the idea. I don't know that we specifically are the people that would cooperate or collaborate with you on something like that. But Lovis, what I would recommend is connect with me on LinkedIn or find me on Slack or wherever you want. You can see my name here is at Jeff Blankenberg. I am that on literally everything. So if you just want to reach out to me, I can try and connect you with the right people. I can't make any promises about where that will go, but happy to make some connections. Let's see. Glyton Franco on YouTube is saying, I've had problems with an MP4 file that was not well formatted, and formatting the file solved the issue. I have also had similar issues with MP3s that didn't have the correct bitrate and encoding. That is a very specific requirement for putting audio files in an Alexa skill. But all my files are properly formatted. I've become a master of the software Audacity. Andy, have you used that?
No.
It's free and it's available on Mac and PC, but it's a piece of software called Audacity, and it's basically I think of it like the Photoshop for audio. So you can go in and open an MP3 file. You get to see the nice waveform. You can cut and paste and piece things together and move things around, change amplitude, sound, all that. But it's an awesome free tool for manipulating audio, and it's especially useful because most MP3s don't come encoded in a way that works well inside Alexa skills. And so you just need to open it and then resave it with the new bitrate encoding, and everything works perfectly. But there's not really a better way to do that. That would be another cool thing we should offer as a tool, is a MP3 converter. So you have a file that you really want to use and you just want the appropriate encoding for Alexa. You upload the file and we give you a download link that gives you the new one. Like, that seems like it wouldn't be terribly hard to do, and it would save everybody from having to learn Audacity and do all that stuff. But anyway, that's a whole other side conversation. A Witter says, I mentioned in the Slack chat that I use DynamoDB TTL to have stale session entries automatically deleted. That's worth considering. It's a good idea. Brian Tarbox, I think, is referring earlier to the silent
discussion.
Yeah, that you and I were facing. And how about just better error logging and reporting? Yeah, I totally agree. Like, that's the obvious solution. Why would we do that? But I think that's a harder problem, right? Allocating development resources inside Amazon to get this stuff identified and worked on. I wish I could say that there were just hundreds and hundreds of developers sitting around waiting for us to give them things to do. There are probably hundreds and hundreds of developers, but they are cranking on all sorts of things, including the stuff that we're going to announce later this summer and later this year. And as we go into the future, right? A lot of our development roadmap stuff is 12, 18 months in some cases. So they're definitely busy.
I think it is worth bringing up, though. I think that, between, both of us and probably Ryan as well, we've run into issues, and we can have that unique perspective, from the developer point of view of how hard it is to know how to debug these things when you're not getting a great error coming back to you. So that's something at least maybe we could add to the list that we tackle together down the road.
For sure. All right. Brian wants to know if we've had any progress in hiring more support folks. He recently got a contact us response 2 months after submitting the question. I will tell you, and when we had Scott on here weekly, he mentioned this as well, is that they are massively understaffed right now. So I don't know anything about our specific hiring, but if anybody wants to be on our support team, I can't recommend enough. Go search for Alexa support, Alexa advocacy on Amazon.jobs. I think I have a banner for that too. If you go to Amazon.jobs and search for even just the word Alexa, if you guys are looking to join our team or come into Amazon and have a big influence on what's going on inside the world of Alexa, we would love to have you. And so Amazon.jobs is the place to find all of those things. And if you have any questions or whatever, reach out to me or Andy on Slack. We can tell you what that role looks like or what we think, the kinds of things you'd be working on are. We don't know all of the jobs, but we can probably get a pretty good idea by reading the job description and letting you know. But if you're interested in working at Amazon on Alexa, I would recommend it. And honestly, if you've been reading the news at all lately, this is all public information, so I'm not sharing anything secret. But Amazon has a massive, massive need for hiring. There's just tons and tons of people that we need. I think, Andy, on our team alone, there's something like 40 open recs, something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty high. Yeah.
So we're looking for people, and Amazon has started to realize very broadly that they can't only hire people that live in Seattle or Washington, D.C. or Austin. Like, they need to be able to reach out to people. So don't assume because you see a job says it's in Seattle that you can't work remotely, or that you're based in Chattanooga, Tennessee. There's it's worthwhile to go through the process because in their heads, they want someone in Seattle, but when they realize that, like, man, we have 4,000 job openings and we can't seem to find people in Seattle for them, they're starting to really open those things up and get a feel for people working in other places in the country. I mean, I'm in Columbus, Ohio, as an example, and I've been here 5.5 years, but they're getting more receptive to the idea of people working remotely. So it's good. Okay, back to the questions. So the Harry, who was the one that had all the devices that were playing sounds every 20 seconds, and I think he's talked to us about this before, but he's broadcasting ultrasonic codes that only mobile devices can hear. So humans don't even hear the sounds. That's pretty cool. Happens every day. They're consistently Wi-Fi connected. He's going to start a support request. I think that's probably the right choice. But Harry, if you do want me to try to connect you with some Alexa for Business people, I'm happy to try to do that. Okay, and then SmartNet TV says Q2 is about possibility and procedure to adding new language. We were talking about Georgian language to Alexa and using our developed TTS in Poly. We are well prepared and would like to make certification if needed. Please advise the steps to make it possible. I don't think Q2 meant Q2, as I thought he was referring.
No, it's the second question because SmartNet TV said they had 2 questions earlier.
Got it. Oh, question 2. Perfect.
Question 2.
So adding new languages is a very time-consuming process to do it properly. And we will continue to roll out new languages for the foreseeable future until we've used up all the languages. But I don't have any idea when the Georgian language would be added. And I think there are some, how can I say this not offensively? I don't want to take anything away from those that speak the Georgian language. But there are a lot of languages that there are more people that speak those languages that we haven't gotten to yet. I don't know the order in which they handle a lot of this. I would imagine geography and things like that come into play as well. But I have a pretty good feeling that if you went and looked at any other Amazon product that supports a number of languages, like the Kindle, Kindle is a really good example. If you go to their Wikipedia page, they do list all of the languages that they support, and it gives you an indication of kind of when that language was released, which then gives you kind of an idea of the priority order we give to languages as Amazon. So I'm not saying you'll find the answer there, and it's certainly not going to give you a date to like when Georgian will be supported on these devices, but it should give you an indication of like, oh, there's like 12 languages in front of me. That should give you an indication of how quickly or slowly your language might be supported. So again, there's no promises, there's no real information in anything that I just said, but it should give you some clear idea of like, oh, I still have a while to wait before my language is going to come because, you know, there's 32 languages listed before mine. Anyway, that's about the best information I have for that. Dana Voice also mentions like the number of devices used by people that speak that language. That's another great example, right? These are all things that they take into consideration. And just because I provided you with some pseudo information there doesn't mean that's actually what they'll stick to either. It could be Georgian's the next language on the list. I don't actually know. So please don't take that out of context. But yeah, I wish I could offer you better guidance or advice on that, but I just don't have any information for you on that one.
Yeah, it does sound like they've got some plans, right? So they're well prepared and would like to make certification if needed. So it sounds like they've been planning this for a little while. Be curious to know what that's, know more about what their plans are, but sounds interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I'm always excited when people have big ideas.
Absolutely.
I want to make sure they have a way to bring those to life. Revital, we were just talking about you earlier today. I'm glad that the team reached out, and it sounds like we're a few weeks away at most, I hope, from getting a solution. So that's always great. Now we got to dig into this though. You can't just say, "How do I make Alexa for the car work better?" Like I need to know how is it not working well now? What is the problem you're having? Because I have an Echo Auto, works really well. I have a talk socket. I don't have it on my phone today. I'm running caseless today. But I have a talk socket on my phone, use that in the car. It works really well. Lots and lots of options. So I'd be very curious to know what you mean by getting it to work better. Does it mean hearing you better? Does it mean getting location information? Like what do you mean by work better? In the meantime, I think that is the end of our list. Man, very efficient, very effective today.
You're doing a good job.
I need to go drink some tea with honey or something after this. I can feel my voice going.
Oh, really?
My daughter had she was in her high school musical, which was over the weekend. So they had a show Friday. They had 2 on Saturday and 1 on Sunday, and they've got to sing and dance and do all this kind of stuff, and you've got the adrenaline riding you through all of those shows. And then Sunday night, she just kind of crashed out. Her sinuses filled up. Like, she just started feeling really sick and gross, and missed school yesterday, just laid in bed. This is not a kid that ever takes naps. She's 18, but like never, ever takes naps, and slept most of the day yesterday. So she was clearly not feeling well. Yeah. But I think it's one of those things where you just ride the high, and then all of a sudden your body's like, I'm done. We need to take a break. So that's where she's at right now. And I don't think it's an illness. I don't think she's sick necessarily, but just worn out. But I'm feeling a little bit of that myself. I went to the Friday night show. I went to the Saturday show. I worked like the concession stand or whatever on Sunday's show. It was a busy weekend. It was fantastic, but it was a busy weekend. Reptile says the device is just not responding immediately. The only catch there would be your internet connection. When you're in the car and you're out in mobile, internet connections can be slower. And I don't know what the situation is there in Israel, but the response time of the device is directly dependent on how good your internet connection is. So faster internet, maybe try it like if you're near your home where you have fast Wi-Fi, maybe try using it while you're connected to the Wi-Fi and see if it's faster then versus when you're driving around and are only on some kind of cellular mobile network. So curious to know if that helps, but that feels like the solution to that is just latency. Dana Boy says allergies are really bad around here. I agree. Allergies are crushing me about this time every year. This in like November.
Yeah.
Do you have any allergies, Andy?
Oh yeah, seasonal allergies.
Yeah, they're no fun. And as all this rain and all that, like everything's blooming here all of a sudden, it's about to get pretty bad.
Yeah, this time of year when I go out to my car and it's covered in a light dusting of yellow pollen.
Yeah, nice. we don't have that because your trees throw pollen, right? That's how your car gets covered for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have the pollination of trees that just shake and like you can see the yellow cloud fall down from them. But the flowers and the grass and everything else definitely gets me. Can I hook an Echo Show 8 up to Netflix and watch on the show? Yes, you can. That is very possible. You can watch Netflix, you can watch YouTube, you can watch Amazon Prime. You should be able to do all of those things. You should just be able to say to your device, open Netflix. And it'll have you log in and probably pair, your account to it and everything. But yeah, that works pretty well. Brian Tarbox says Echo Buds are awesome. He never uses his Echo Auto anymore. Brian, this suggests to me that you're driving with headphones in, which I don't, at least in the United States, I think is illegal. I don't know where you are based, but even one earbud I think is against the law, or at least it should be. And the number of times that I drive by people though with Andy with headphones on like yours,
oh yeah,
is mind blowing.
Really?
I don't know how people feel safe or comfortable driving with big headphones on. But I think we're another 10 years from where every car on the road has Bluetooth. And so I think there are a lot of people that want to listen to their music, but they don't want to like play their phone just from their pocket or from their cup holder. And they don't have an easy way to connect their phone to their stereo.
Yeah.
Because they don't even have headphone jacks anymore. So yeah, I think people wear headphones because they just want to listen to their music, but it's so unsafe. Like you can't hear what's going on around you. I don't know. That seems dangerous to me.
Yeah. Reading Brian Tarbox's last comment about a guy who drove around actually playing a bugle.
Oh, so Brian is based in the United States, here in Boston, he says. I'm assuming that's not Boston, UK. actively playing a bugle. I mean, somehow that feels better than wearing headphones.
I don't know. That the bugle can be pretty loud.
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially if the car is closed in. And an airbag incident would be very ugly. I agree. His mouthpiece sticking out the back of his head or something. Yeah, that would be bad. All right, we still have 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
I feel like I wish I had something else like top of mind that I could talk with you about. I was going to talk about that APL problem I had today, but we got through that.
Yeah.
What else?
Didn't get many hardware or smart home skill questions today, which is fine.
Yeah.
I'm slowly trying to bring the smart home channel on Slack into this office hours, so we'll see. Oh, getting some more.
It's always good to get some smart home questions.
Yeah.
Brian Tarbox then asked public widgets. If you guys recall on the Echo Show 15 here, there are widgets. That's the little boxes that are sitting here. Those are not yet publicly available for us, third-party developers, to build. But I can guarantee you the moment those are available, that's getting slid into my casino stuff, right? Showing you a little widget that shows you your coin totals and an easy button to like go play a game. Yeah, that's going to happen. Jokesta on Twitch just asks, Home Assistant? I don't know what they mean by that question, but that feels like something that falls into your ballpark, Andy.
Home Assistant. You can think of a lot of home assistants.
Yeah.
Talking about Astro there? You're talking about...
Oh, man, I want an Astro so bad.
Where's that at? Did you...
I don't have any information on it yet.
No?
I wish I did, but I do not.
Look at that. Revitol. Netflix awesome. On the Echo Show.
There we go. Oh, Jokesta clarified. Here's he wants your thoughts, Andy. I think your thoughts.
Oh.
On the future with an open source home assistant by Nabu Casa. Do you know Nabu Casa?
I am not familiar with that. I'll have to check that out.
Do you have any thoughts on the future of open source home assistants or just the open source smart home in general? Is that, and maybe this is just an opportunity for you to talk about Matter a little bit. Does that drive us to a place where things are a little more universal and accessible?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a big excitement in the smart home industry. You know, the Matter standard coming out to make it easier to connect devices and set up devices on your home network over, Wi-Fi or Thread networks. So it's exciting. I don't know about the future of open source home assistants. I haven't given a lot of thought to that. I assume that means like people creating their own home assistants outside of, the usual suspects, in terms of, maybe it's a smart home hub, I guess you could think about that, or, I don't think they're going to try to replicate what Amazon and Google and Apple do, but I think, in terms of smart home hub that can connect to various devices is interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is an exciting time. We're still waiting for the Matter spec to be released. Well, actually, you can see it in GitHub as they work on it, but in terms of the official date when we start seeing devices, that's not ready yet. But yeah, it is an exciting time in the industry.
Yeah. Okay, we got a couple last minute questions popping in here. Don says, I use HomeSeer for my home automation, and there's an Alexa skill that allows access to HomeSeer devices. It works pretty cool. That's not actually a question, but sorry, I thought that would land on a question. Thank you, Don, for sharing that, though. That's good to know. And Jokesta says he's surprised that we haven't heard of it because it's popular.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to dig in and look at that.
I'm fairly new to the smart home space. I've less than a year in this role, so I'm Thank you for letting me know about it.
Revital also said asked if we had an opportunity to check the phonetic alphabet on the Echo Show. So it seems to me, Revital, that you have an accessibility setting turned on, because if you noticed, it's not actually, I mean, it is the phonetic alphabet. And as you swipe up on your screen, you are telling it to say the next letter. But what it's actually doing is using the captioning that is on the screen. And so when you swipe up, it was actually reading for you letter by letter we call it a hint, but in the bottom left-hand corner of devices, sometimes it'll say, I can't drag one up here, but it says right now, like, try Alexa, show me this recipe. When you were swiping up on your screen, it was actually
popular recipes for the day.
Alexa, stop. It was actually spelling out the entire statement that was on the screen, that hint. So my assumption is that somehow you turned on an accessibility feature that is reading those things for you phonetically, letter by letter. I don't know why it would spell it out for you rather than just read the words to you or something like that. But and I didn't find I didn't go look yet for an actual feature that does that. But I did notice that as the video you sent me, as you were swiping up on each letter, it was spelling out the hint that was on the screen. So that's my suspicion as to why that's happening. Oxygen Box wants to know, if I create a skill that is a better mousetrap than some standard Alexa functionality, for example, currency conversion, is there a way for the user to make this a default so they don't need to call the invocation to access it? Today, no, there isn't. I think that name-free invocation will help you with that by really pushing the envelope on what you're doing with name-free invocation, and Dana Voice is kind of chiming in on that as well. That will help. But I do imagine a future, and again, this is Jeff speaking, this is not Amazon, I'm not making product predictions here, but I do imagine a future where you have that kind of customization for when I say this, I want this thing to happen. And one way that you could do this is by allowing your skill to create a custom routine for a user. So you can override everything as a user by creating a routine. So let's say you want to use the phrase, what is the weather? And you want that to actually, like, I don't know, turn on your back porch, the lights on your back porch. You can create a routine. You can use those words. You in the routine can define that, hey, I want my back porch lights to turn on when that thing happens. And from now on, when you say, what's the weather? It's going to turn on your lights. It's not going to tell you about the weather. So as a result of that, your skill has the ability to create a routine for your user. You could create a routine that says, hey, from now on, when you say this, you're going to use our skill. And then you create that routine dynamically for them. And from now on, when they say that thing, they will come into your skill. My understanding with this, though, is that when all of those features are available, you will only get one, I think. And so you can't like spam like 50 phrases and say, all these things will all lead to my skill now. So I think between name-free invocation and custom routines, I think those things will eventually solve all your problems. Routines is something that we talked about at Alexa Live 2021, but I don't believe that all of that functionality has been made available just yet. Okay. SmartNet.TV says, we are developers, but we can't find a way to cooperate with Alexa to offer the new language, or at least the TTS that we made. Yeah, I would imagine Amazon is going to be very specific about how they handle creating new languages. And even if you do have your own TTS for a specific language, that feels like an unlikely thing for them to just ingest it. So again, if you want to try to connect with me, I can try and connect you with the right people, but that seems like that's probably a bigger reach than you want to try to make that happen. Revital wants to know if it's possible to develop an application using a blueprint. Yes, you can go to blueprints.amazon.com and create all sorts of experiences on Alexa without writing any code. So yeah, you can definitely do that. Skipping ahead here a bit. Benjamin Anderson's really looking forward to widgets on Echo Show 15. It was the main reason he bought it. And then Habuma says, I really like the ability for routines to have slots that can be passed along to the backing skill. That way I don't need to create several routines where the only difference is a slot value. Agreed, Habuma. I like that. I'm going to add that to my list of things that they should do. Again, I I carry so little weight sometimes in our product road mapping, but I like to think that I'm gaining power there. So I will add this to my list, and we'll see what we can do with it. But with that, Andy, we are right at time.
Wow. All right.
That was an hour. It went so fast.
Yeah.
So thank you guys all for tuning in. Thank you all for being here. Hopefully we answered your questions in an acceptable, useful way. And if we didn't, please follow up with us. We are on Slack. We are on LinkedIn. We're all over the place. So if you want to reach out, if you have questions, just find us and we'd be happy to chat. But with that, we'll sign off for today and we'll see you all next week. Bye, everyone.